Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY weekend here aboard good old Athena. You know, sometimes you just have to throw caution to the wind and say, for helvedes, or at least that's what you'd say in Danish. This weekend I am going to remove the remaining deck hardware. You can't really see it from that angle, but trust me, there's some stuff hiding underneath that tarp. I wasn't planning on removing that hardware until I at the very least had a firm date for when I could get Athena into one of those sheds behind me, but time is a-wasting. No doubt most of you guys remember my somewhat optimistic plan for what I'm gonna achieve this summer. In case you don't, there's a video linked in down below. Now, if I'm to have any chance of achieving this, I really need to get a move on. The first task I'd like to take care of this summer is to get the deck painted, get the non-skid on there, and get some of the deck hardware remounted. My reason for prioritizing that particular task is quite simple. Even if I don't succeed in splashing Athena this coming fall, I would much prefer not to spend another winter with her covered up in tarps. They're noisy, they get blown to smithereens, they're just an all-around pain in the behind. But for me to be able to get rid of the tarp, I need to be able to remount the port lights. Oh, and a small little side note, let me go ahead and apologize for any kind of weird background noise in this video. It is spring and the yard is starting to be pretty busy. Yep, this is where I left off last October when it got too cold to continue working on the boat. So as you can see, I've got a bit of work ahead of me here before I'm ready to remount the port lights. The first step is going to be to remove all of the remaining deck hardware. Then I need to fair the cabin top, and then I need to paint the cabin top and the cockpit. Besides removing the old grab rails, the support for the life raft, cleats, winches, and a bunch of other deck hardware, I also want to get rid of this old Treadmaster. And I think that might be a little bit of a struggle, but we'll see later today. And that is the first piece of deck hardware removed. But there is still a whole heap of stuff left to remove. I think I'll be lucky if I get done with this today. You might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, that can't possibly take an entire day to remove that little bit of deck hardware. Well, if messing around old boats the last 5 years has taught me anything, it's the fact that everything takes longer than you think it's gonna. This makes me slightly nervous. There's something that's through-bolted here, and the inside of this is slathered in what looks like silicone. The fact that this is all gooped up makes me think that this was leaking at some point and someone took the easy way out and just slathered it in silicone, thinking that that would be a good fix, which it's of course not, because then water would still get into the core. I haven't found any soft spots on the cabin top, so it might not be an issue, but it's certainly a little bit of a red flag. Speaking of red flags, look at all this rust here, and this janky mess here is part of what secures the main sheet. I mean, it looks really ghetto, but obviously it's been fine up until now. Just as I thought I was done removing headliner, turns out there is just a little bit left here in the port aft cabin. Seeing me moving around here in the aft cabin, I'm sure most of you can understand why I'm gonna remove this and enlarge the head and just take a little bit of room away from what's gonna be a technical room here behind me. Ha ha! Wow, look at that. That is pretty crusty. It does look like there is a little bit of delamination up here where that very rusty couple of bolts were, but we'll take a closer look a little later. I gotta say, some of the weird-ass shortcuts Triton Marine took while building Athena are just... Come in here and take a look at this. The nut and bolt that's hiding underneath this laminate here, that is for the grab rail. So obviously they put the grab rail on the cabin top before tapping this in place. And then when they went to tap this in place, they were like, oh, but there's a bolt here. Yeah, let's just go ahead and glass over it. I'm sure someone is going to call me out in the comment section for mentioning this, but for me, seeing this just speaks to a lack of attention to detail while building Athena. Enter stage right, Mr. Angle Grinder. There we go. Problem at least partly solved. I've been toiling away for a few hours and I think there is a bunch of hardware up on the cabin top that's ready to be removed, so let's go do that. The support for the life raft appears to be just screwed to the deck. It's not through bolted. The only two items that are left on the cabin top now is the radar and this old Furuno GPS. It looks like these glands here have done a great job of sealing up the hole here. There are absolutely no signs of leaks inside the boat. And just like that, that was the last two pieces of stuff that was mounted to the cabin top. Now, I still have a lot of stuff in the cockpit to remove, but at least this is progress. Now, I am left with some pretty sizable gaping holes in the cabin top that I'll have to do something about, but that's not a big deal. So far, this is all the stuff I've pulled off of the cabin top. A lot of this is not going to get reused. This winch is going to get reused. I'll service that. But yeah, I might reuse this. This is cracked. This is kind of corroded. But yeah, I'll figure that out later. It is going to rain tonight, so any area where I've pulled off a piece of hardware off of the boat, well, I'll have to cover up that area not to get water into the core. So I think I'm going to hold off on removing the last of the hardware in the cockpit and then instead spend the rest of today trying to remove that old Treadmaster. As with so many other things I do here aboard Athena, this is another first for me. I've never tried removing Treadmaster before, so I don't know if using my oscillating multi-tool is the best idea, but let's find out. I spent around 3 hours yesterday on my Treadmaster debacle, and I'm happy to report that I'm about a quarter of a way through it. I only had this flexible attachment for my oscillating multi-tool, and I don't think this is the best attachment for removing Treadmaster because, as you can see, it's starting to crack here. I think a more rigid scraping attachment would fare a lot better, but there's nowhere for me to get my hands on one of those here in Skive during the weekend, so I opted to just sand away all of the Treadmaster. I removed the bulk of it with 36 grit paper on an angle grinder, and that worked okay. The Treadmaster seems to be adhered in place with something that resembles epoxy, and adding heat to that is not going to help me, so I'm stuck doing a lot of glorious sanding. I need to pick up the pace here because it's going to start raining later today and I want to get in as much sanding time as I can. The process today is going to be the same as yesterday. I'll use 36 grit on my angle grinder to get rid of this stuff and then 80 grit on my 150 turbo to get rid of the adhesive. And just like that, half of the Treadmaster is gone. And the timing is perfect because it's just now starting to rain, so I better get the tarp over the cabin top. I knew it was going to start raining today, so I've picked up an extra tarp that I can throw over the cockpit, and that way I can continue working. Ta-da! It is the return of the super ghetto full cockpit enclosure. That is one down, 4 to go. And that is the port side done. I didn't get much of it on camera, but removing these 3 winches and these 3 cleats here was very time consuming. Access was not great, and yeah, that was just a complete nightmare. The good news is the core looks to be in good condition. That is certainly cause for celebration, because that means I won't have to rip this apart to replace the piece of plywood that's embedded in this. Now there's just the small matter of 2 winches and 2 cleats on the starboard side. It is amazing how much headliner there is aboard this boat. It's gonna take forever to put all of that back. Oh, this aft cabin is so cramped. If you're wondering why I want to turn this part of the boat into a technical area, well, the crampedness is a big part of that. Athena is only 38 feet, so with 2 heads and 3 cabins, something is going to get a little bit cramped. And in this case, it's definitely the port aft cabin. But enough yammering on, let's head up into the cockpit. It should be very simple to pry off the last 2 winches and the last 2 cleats now, but fingers crossed. And there we go. That was the last bit of hardware. As far as the winches go, I'm gonna do everything I can to spiffy them up and service them, because this is like the gross national product of a small African country. I've removed the little patches of Treadmaster in the cockpit on both sides, so I think I'm gonna call it quits for today. Good morning, guys. It is a beautiful sunny Sunday morning, and that means in about 4 to 6 hours I should be done removing the last bit of Treadmaster up on deck. But first step is to remove the tarps. There's just this little bit of Treadmaster left, and you know what they say, the sooner you get started, the sooner you're done. I am all set to get started. I've got everything I need, so now it's just a matter of putting in the time, and that I do not mind. If nothing else, I have certainly succeeded in making a giant mess. Now there's just the adhesive left. If I had 36 grit sandpaper or one of these here newfangled nets here for my 150 turbo, I think I'd much prefer to use that over the angle grinder. With the 150 turbo in force drive mode, it takes away a lot of material quickly, and you don't get that annoying tingling sensation in your fingers and hands after having used it for hours and hours. So yeah, I would much prefer this over the angle grinder. Sadly, this is the coarsest medium I've got. It's 80 grit. Ta-da! That is it. I am done removing Treadmaster. I think I've done pretty good so far this weekend, removing all of that Treadmaster and all of the hardware up on the cabin top and the cockpit. But I'm not done yet, because I've checked and it's warm enough for me to start using epoxy. So I could go ahead and enlarge all of the holes from that deck hardware and fill them with epoxy and seal them up. It's not really that I want to enlarge the holes, I just want to make sure that I expose some fresh core in there so that the epoxy has something to bite into. It does look like there is a little bit of wet core up here where the main sheet attaches to the cabin top, but that's okay. I was planning on reinforcing this area anyways. I doubt you guys will be able to see, but there is a little bit of spongy wetness in there. This is a balsa core, and there's nothing wrong with that, but for an area like this where you're going to have something that's going to be tightened down, I would much rather have a piece of plywood. So I'm going to cut out a sizable chunk of this and replace it with plywood. For those at home keeping score, turns out there are 73 holes in the cabin tub. Quite a lot. But I'm done taping, so let's mix up some epoxy. I've added in a tiny bit of 406. Not a lot, just a tiny bit. I still want this to be nice and runny. I am done filling holes, at least here in the cabin tub. The ones in the cockpit, they'll have to wait until this video is rendering because I'm running out of time. But before ending this video, there's one little thing I want to show you. Ta-da! Custom laser cut nitrile rubber gaskets. These bad boys are of course for the new diesel tank, which I should have by next weekend if everything goes according to plan. The astute will note that there are 4 gaskets here. That is because I've ordered an extra set. I'm pretty sure just the one set is gonna last basically forever, but having an extra set here aboard the boat seems like a good idea. I am very excited by these gaskets because having these means I don't have to do some kind of janky attempt at sealing up the hatches with some kind of sealant. This is the proper way of doing it. I am going to put these aside for now, but hopefully next weekend I will get to show you the spiffy looking gaskets on the spiffy looking diesel tank. Like I mentioned, I am sadly running out of time here, so I need to get busy rendering this video. While the video is rendering, I'm going to fill in those holes in the cockpit so that the core is nice and safe. Yeah, I guess that was it for this video. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!